Decolonizing forest governance, understanding encroachment on forest. The history of Adivasi struggle that eventually resulted in conceiving the scheduled tribes and traditional forest dwellers, recognition of Forest Rights Act of 2006 is an outcome of several nationwide movements and campaigns for the recognition of forest dwelling communities' rights on forest lands and its produce. And so I believe that it's very crucial for us to understand the struggle behind the Forest Rights Act of 2006, as it opens up the question of why are Andolans so important for Adivasi communities. Andolans are so important for Adivasi communities because the state subjectivity of the community has been imagined in such a way that it went from a complete erasure or a complete negation of the existence of such a community to exploitative practices which were furthered by the process of urbanization and modernization, which sealed back the discourse and produced it through the state's lens. Whereas the Forest Rights Act of 2006 was, a, was the outcome of another approach. It was a digression from the earlier one because the Forest Rights Act tries to decolonize forest lands, dismantle the governance mechanism which was developed during the colonial period, and it produces a subject, an individual, who holds legitimate rights. As we understand by the word Adivasi itself, the term is used to describe original inhabitants of a certain land. As Adivasi communities imagined to be existing on the Indian lands much before the Aryans. This is one of the reasons why I insist on the usage of the word Adivasi instead of using the word scheduled tribe, because scheduled tribe is a codified is has been codified by the state. Now, and I also believe that the term scheduled tribe comes from two dominant dichotomies of encroacher and of backwardness. As scheduled tribes and scheduled castes was enshrined in the Article of 342 of the Constitution of India, the determination of the scheduled tribe is notified by the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes and Ministry of Tribal Affairs and Registrar General, which is based on the evaluation of the way of living and social customs, religious practices, dialects, educational and economic status, which only points out towards the existing prejudice in such an introduction, as the determination of the ST subject is based on stereotypical imagination of hilly landscape, hunting gathering, forest fire imageries. And thus I also want to point out that this blanket term of scheduled tribe is a hegemonic one, because it fails to assimilate the intra-group differences within these tribes. A uniform categorization which is more so an administrative one, I would say. Identification is a new process, but categorization has been an old one, and these categorizations must be cut across the sharp axis of regional and cultural differences, which also points out towards the various groups that have been left out of this categorization as well. There are various denotified tribes. Now this brings us towards the question of how the Adivasi community has been alienated from their rightful lands. I believe, and so do many scholars, that one could understand this if one looks at the struggle in two phases. So the first phase would be pre-independence, and the other one would be post-independence. I emphasize on the term independence because I believe that the Adivasi community and its struggle for existence and survival did not change after India attained independence. So, in some senses, the community never attained independence, or Azadi as we call it. Firstly, by the colonial rulers, when we talk about the community's exploitation by the colonial rulers, one has to understand that the colonial rulers or the British introduced an act, a law, which was called the Indian Forest Act of 1927, which was very elementary as forests were viewed as a source of revenue. Forest was viewed as a resource, right? And thus there was assumed control and rights and ownership over the forest and its produce, such as fuel, fodder, timber, and other produces. And this ultimately deprived the forest dwelling community from their rightful livelihood, for which they relied heavily on the forest. The colonial rulers established the hegemonic forest department, a machinery for the purpose of occupying forests and its produce. But this alienation of the Adivasi community does not end with the colonial rule. The alienation of the Adivasi community from their rightful lands continued in the post-independence period as well, which was maintained by the maintenance of the Indian Forest Act, because it was continued, which was also maintained by the introduction of more such laws, such as the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, which could be understood that these laws, when they talked about conservation, came from a conservatism. Conservation and conservatism are two different views. Conservation could be one of equilibrium. There could be a participatory approach that could be brought about when conservation is the main approach. Because to understand that Adivasi communities have been conserving forests and for several years. So conservatism, on the other hand, comes from a different approach than conservation. But these laws ensured the removal and deprivation of tribal populace, which has led to Adivasi struggles across the country, mostly in order to assert their community rights over forest land that they have been foraging and dwelling in ancestrally. Yet the National Forest Policy of 1988 did bring the principle of social forestry. Social forestry or joint forest management or community management, but all of these efforts towards understanding the rights of the forest dwelling community, as they were futile. By the year of 2002, as the MOEF orders mass evictions happen across different states in India, there were, and this was the prime contributor to the upsurge, and it gave the regional tribal movements, because there were several tribal movements happening in respective regions, and so this gave these regional movements a national character. There were many campaigns and movements that led to the culmination of Scheduled Tribes and Traditional Forest Dwelling Recognition of Forest Rights Act of 2006. One such campaign was Campaign for Survival and Dignity, CSD, which bud out of the politicizing and of the Adivasi community towards nationally demanding redressal. CSD was the coming together of different state federations for the same, which undertook various activities varying across parliamentary, legislative advocacy, network initiatives, direct actions, judicial and media advocacy. The fifth schedule and the sixth schedule enshrines the legal framework for designated tribal majority areas. But these designated tribal majority areas are in turn tribal minority areas in the contemporary time and age. Constitutional autonomy, by the means of various development policies of the state, have only failed to assimilate the reality of the tribal communities, which in turn push towards further exclusion of the exclusion and marginalization of the community. Through the years, there have been various policies and law enactments to safeguard the rights of the tribal community and to undo the historic injustice against the community. So, one of such law was the Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act in the year in 1989, or the Forest Rights Act of 2006, or the PESA Act, because the PESA Panchayat extension of Schedule Act of 1996 was to recognize self-governance in tribal majority areas. And these were laws that were devised to do away with the historic injustice committed against the tribal populace of the country. After the application of Forest Rights Act in the year 2006, several Adivasi women in Andhra Pradesh claimed common property as well as individual property rights to land, out of which only 10% were granted individual ownership, while the common property were barely acknowledged. Now, Forest Rights Act is so important because that is also one step towards gender justice, because Forest Rights Act for the first time talked about women's rights to lands, in the sense that uh, that certain claims must be made in women's land. It is a common understanding, predominantly Adivasi areas, that insists particularly on community land rights as opposed to individual land rights, which is then met with several contradictions in law enactments. So now the continuation of the Indian Forest Act, or the Wildlife Protection Act of the 1972, or the Forest Conservation Act of the 1988, or the Land Acquisition Ordinance of 2015, or the Mines and Minerals Development Regulation Act of 2015, these are particularly laws that render the community landless. They deem them as encroachers of forest land. Now, to understand who is the encroacher and who has the right over the land, now these are the community that have been foraging, that have been cultivating on these lands. But by declaring, by the land reforms that took place in the year of 1955, uh, these lands were recorded as Benami lands or public lands, right? And by doing that, these lands government then become government's property. Once that happens, Adivasi community in itself becomes the encroacher. The national policy of the 1988 was the national forest policy of the 1988 was the first time such a language was used. So, uh, and these are several turmoils that gave birth to several resistance movements. Land elements of the state development policies, coupled with corporatization, have subsequently furthered the discontent and distress in the community at large. The bureaucracy of the process of claiming lands under the forest rights is governed by the hierarchical and bureaucratic legacy of the Indian Forest Act of the 97. Even though the Indian Forest Act has been done away with, there are several amendments that have been made, and its counterparts, such as the Imperial Forest Department, vis-a-vis the Indian Forest Services, still govern the forest management and the governance. Thus, in order to understand the pertinence of scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers' recognition of Forest Rights Act of 2006, it becomes important to highlight on the struggle leading to the recognition of such a law. Thus, a brief timeline is needed to understand the transfusion of an oppressive mandate into an inclusive, rights-based act. In the post-independence India, land became a primal requisite for economic development. The forest reform policy of the 1952 failed to assimilate the Adivasi subject within its purview. The exploitation and the removal of Adivasis continued as there was negation of the existence of such a community. the policies that rely their livelihood solely on the Forest Wildlife Protection Act of 72 and Forest Conservation Act of the 1980 are tools for ensuring the marginalization of the Adivasi community by ensuring that the ownership, access, use of forest is unobtainable to the Adivasi community. The forest policy of 1988 for the first time classified the category of forest dwelling communities by establishing that there exists a relationship between the forests and the forest dwelling communities. The structural adjustment policies of the 1990s set stage for the exploitation of the natural resources in lieu of private interests. The agenda wasn't right based but was essentially to regulate, control, and access to community for the maintenance of ecological balance. So, we understand that the Forest Rights Act was a digression, was a diversion from from the dominant patterns that had been governing our laws, and thus Forest Rights Act was a step forward towards bringing in and understanding the Adivasi subject. Thank you.